Well, space is there, and we're going to climb it. And the moon and the planets are there. And new hope for knowledge and peace are there. We ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. Thank you.
If you recall, it was a very interesting time. It was a time when, shortly after the launching of Sputnik, when Americans were very worried about whether or not the Russians were going to beat us to the moon, whether or not their science was better than our science. You had people in high places in government who believed that there was a serious educational crisis on our hands, and we had to get the best brains in the country together to work on solving the problem.
When you try to go back, you're never quite sure whether you're writing a novel or telling about history. But the beginning of the curriculum reform movement, of course, started with the business of putting together better curricula in mathematics and physics. And then as time went on, it was very strongly the feeling that this is a very, very narrow way of looking at the process of educational transformation in America, that if we really wanted to do something, we should get off onto other conceptions as well. We should teach people how to understand history, how to understand, indeed, the nature of man.
Man, of course, a study course fell into a realm that was a little different than a lot of the other courses because it was the social sciences. Most of the other things that were produced were in mathematics or the hard sciences. So when you started to tamper, I suppose, with the conventional wisdom of how you teach kids about the social world, you could, I suppose, be accused of promoting a particular ideology. But I don't think we perceived it that way. I think we perceived it as trying to understand human behavior better. If in anthropology, which is the field we're talking about here, you begin to understand something about the nature of a culture, the way in which that culture fits together in its various pieces, you may be understanding aspects of many other societies as well. Now, how do you get there? How do you begin to identify what those key ideas are? You need somebody well-trained in the discipline, very well-trained in the discipline, and also immersed in the field of subject matter that you're talking about. And Belixi, Ozan Belixi represented probably one of the most knowledgeable people in the world about the nature of Inuit society. So he was absolutely essential to us in helping us think about simple and powerful ways of thinking about society in general.
We were firmly convinced that with these new tools, with the Eskimo materials at the center of the program, we would be able to effectively oppose racism and ethnocentrism in America. We really believe it. You mentioned that basically the course did not have a moral message to deliver to the kids. It was value-free. The course was value-free. I don't think so.
You're putting me on the spot. I think we tried to present what might be described as a scientific view of culture. Okay, in that sense, the value was scientific, but to the extent that you're immersing them in another culture, of course, it was not value-free. Thought we were going to change the world. I mean, it was the Kennedy era. Anything was possible if you got enough right people and resources and creativity together, you could make a difference. Although I'd have to say that the controversy stopped me in my tracks for a long time. Certainly at the heart of Manicourse's study was this notion that you could get kids to turn around on what it means to be a human being and understand that. Maybe understand something about the origins of humanness, and as Bruner hoped, maybe have them think about how you create a more human or a more humane way of life.
In the process of discussing the thing, we began posing the problem in terms of answers to three questions. First of all, what's distinctively human about human beings as compared to others? Secondly, how did they get to be that way? But then there was a third question: how could he be made more so? How do you make humans more human? How, in short, as somebody said, what are you trying to do, make these kids into contemporary philosophers? And the answer was yes, why not?
And I found it compelling. I said, wait a minute. If I were to think about my own teaching as a history teacher in this way, how would I organize the way I teach kids? And of course, one of the things was to get rid of the textbook. Get rid of these great compendiums of codified knowledge that we were transmitting to kids, and engage kids more directly in the process of knowledge generation. There was nothing that I can think of in educational filmmaking that was at all like this that preceded it. I mean, the conventional educational film was sort of 30 minutes long with an authoritative commentary on it, so that you knew you were being told all the time what you were seeing and the significance of what you were seeing. The idea of taking that prop away and getting the viewer to figure it out for themselves was entirely new.
I represented more Indians than anyone else in America in my congressional district, Navajos and Apaches and Hopis. So I had a very sympathetic feeling for Indians to try and give them a chance if they would like to come into Western civilization. If they didn't, that's their choice. But we found the Netsilik tribe, at least as portrayed in this program, is extremely primitive, too primitive a society to say this should be an example for our students to follow.
In other words, here was this primitive culture that believed in all this bizarre stuff, like whatever, putting ash on the fish's eyes before they ate them or something like that, you know? And then Cami Peterson says, well, you know, in this class here, are there any other people in the class who have similarly bizarre ideas about how the way the world works, you know? You know, Conwin would think, are you trying to equate these primitive pagan rituals and these deeply meaningful and, you know, sophisticated spiritual beliefs that many Americans share? And I would say, yes, indeed I am making that equation. I think they're all equally weird, you know. There are Judeo-Christian rituals, or there are Catholic rituals, or there are Jewish rituals, there are Episcopalian rituals, there are Netsilik rituals, and then for those of us who are non-believers, well, we have our rituals too, right? Because ritual is just a natural part of all human cultures. I mean, I would guess that might be more consistent with what he wanted. But what he got, like from me, you know, and Judy, is, well, we don't believe any of this crap at all. You know, that was the response that he got. And then the congressman saw that, and he realized that these films, right, had the potential to precipitate those sorts of responses, you know, and generate those sorts of responses. And that's what he found abhorrent. So it wasn't the curriculum. So in a way, you know, Bruner sort of created a little bit of a monster.
It comes head on when you take a look at the whole conception of trying to use another culture as a medium for making one more aware of one's own culture. I'm not saying that the only important thing in the world is awareness, but I'm saying that without awareness, there is moral and mental death.
Uglimirorli hunataqalualerluni taamanagiaqaraluarluni tukihini ajornartuugala kihiani quvianangituti amihiuballalerningannarpalukku taamannakkuulertut taamannattaa tukihilluga ajoqqooqattartaqaluara pa unikkaaniarama quvianangittuugala naanninutaqaqaraluaramnu taamnalu атаахта инмини махувеанангиммарит тукихини ajornammarittu тааманаама нингангни ангиллуалерлүни
kullisviikka ihjulakki